It's February 21st, 2023. Yesterday was President's Day. Um, and even though I was having, again, I don't want to put it out, but almost like a muscle dystrophy, somewhere between connective tissue and the striated muscles in my lower extremities. Um, but I still went for an hour run, or at my attempt at run, and then I proceeded to walk for I think about 3 hours thereafter. It was an incredibly arduous, strenuous day for me, but I pushed through in the sense of make a mark, make as many steps as you can, which I did for my children's sake as to where is my health at this age, um, which was never this deteriorated. I'm not clear. I don't know what's happening. Um, and even though I have access to medical care, it is not the medical care or the level of medical care that is actually responsive and helpful. They're not like medical detectives in they actually want to see you become healthy again. It's more of this wishy-washy sending you for diagnostics but never really concluding anything substantiated. Um, Leaving you with more questions than answers. So I was watching YouTube.com. There was Lewis had there's a man by the name of Lex Friedman. He was interviewing another gentleman named Sean Carroll. Um, and the topic was many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Now, there was a mention of Hugh Everett III, which I then looked up as the reference because it's embedded in the link and the work of what was being referenced by Sean Carroll. I don't know the etiquette of these discussions or conversations. I don't. I have no experience per se. Being in the series of rooms I've been within. Um, so I listened from the beginning to the end. I then went back. I then looked for the key points that really spoke. Um, One is to quote Sean Carroll, at a time of 3.15. He says, quantum system in a superposition becomes entangled with the outside world. And I'm like, all right, there's just a piece of conjecture. And then 3.40, how do you map that? This was the question. He says, how do you map that theory onto reality? And I'm like, that's really more. But again, doesn't that go to theory of mechanics to applied mechanics, which in the application in my journey seems to have some criminal component to the way I've been forced into this dead end situation. Um, so it says, and then at 5.24, he speaks on finite Hilbert space, with the universe making the statement that the universe is accelerating, that they know this. And then he speaks of this horizon around us. I can only imagine that horizon is almost like a diameter. So a like in really like simple mathematics, where then a radius can be drawn from the to make some form of a measurement, and then to see how fast the acceleration rate is. Again, for me, the application of mapping the theory onto my reality is when I arrived, I don't know socio-politically in a nanospace, in a microspace of just the state of New York, and more micro to that, being Bayside in 1978, to then macro to that position in New York State, macro to that something geopolitical that may have been going on. Maybe it was a BOD, maybe it was a GOD. I'm not really clear at heraldry and genealogy who was responsible. Again, there's this word I've heard in ghetto speak, on the television. They talk about being busted on Dick Wolf's version of Law and Order with NYPD at the local police level. Totally different busted than the busts that other people look after. Again, I don't know, because of the relation in actual space and time and my arrival, who watches over the busts, how you find out if your genealogical appearance has a bust already on file in more of like a statuesque type way, like the Pieta um, in Rome, or something in Florence, or Venetian. Like, again, it's really difficult when there are testaments to a long history and a genetic heraldry, and then that genealogy and heraldry being withheld from your person throughout your life, and then the marriage of what you needed based on grandmothers and the first granddaughter. And then if you have beauty, then there is some hierarchical, like, promise to principle of some sort in order. I mean, again, these are real inner family dynamics. Not real clear why I was left in such a dangerous position. I mean, it seemed like it, on one hand, I mean, they assigned me a Jesuit. I don't really know what that means in human speak. I don't, like, again, I don't have anything to base it off of. But at one point in high school, when I was working at All the Right Stuff, which was a pizzeria, they sent in a pizza man who claimed he was a Jesuit, JJ Galucio, to watch over I don't know what. Um, and so, and that was a job that I held, where I was serving the public food, in a public service area, I suppose. Um, and that was in Huntington, which was US Post 11743. So anyhow, so where none of this was being discussed. I don't know what kind of school. Again, one of the locals that Lewis knows considers it an Ivy League education where I was. I don't really know. I'm sure that between an amen and an omen, maybe that makes sense. I don't know if that puts problems in to be or not to be, and then possibly a republic. So I don't want to go too in depth on that. Also, this morning I saw on CNN, Lewis had on something about a man referred to as spider, and I'm like, now how is that possibly relevant in theory to the itsy bitsy spider? So anyhow, so, or is it not? I mean, like, again, they put that out at nursery school level when I was just a child. Sometimes these things have crossover events. Again, he's a James and a Mark. He's a major and a general. So that seems like a major, like, issue, like, of importance in coined incidences in amongst the. I also realized they gave me a word called doodad, I think I figured out what that actually means this morning. I found that out on the news as well. I think they added an extra D to put that out into the public at some point wherever I was in the series of rooms I was in for I don't know what reason. Anyhow, so going back to this horizon and this universe accelerated, when I arrived, um, there were no, like, the phone was attached to the wall and we didn't use it much. And then there was limited, it was mostly books, it was limited television. But over my life frame, it feels like while I was in these series of rooms, which I thought were to protect whatever the quantum system was doing in superpositions, um, but while I was there, it seems something else was building within an interior of a system and almost pushing the boundary and accelerating the universe so far from my fulcrum, or from the point from which my initial arrival was. Since I'm a cosmic mother, again, I have in space and time, I have a mechanic that's really important between the here and now and the future, spatially. And so, um, and by cosmology. So I'm, it feels almost like that circle was moving at such a great distance. Like, I didn't hear about this word college or university until somebody, when I was serving food, brought it up, and asked if the high school I was going to was college preparatory, which I didn't even know what the word college meant. I'd never heard it before. Um, it wasn't on the vocabulary list that they were using at this Ivy League school, that they call it. So, anyhow, so it almost feels like there was this expanse going on in many world theories beyond my world. And I call it like the great beyond. Um, and then it was almost like there were no stepping stones. I don't know if I was supposed to have stepping stones, but if I was not supposed to have stepping stones, then where is the handoff directly from the time of, like, coming of season into whichever principal I was to be with? I mean, again, or principal just at a level of, I've only met one of those in my entire life. Actually, I think I met two, but one in the way that I would have preferred. Um, and so that's where this theory and mapping it on a reality actually makes most sense for my person. So I'm going to just reference the man who said it first and put it out there, um, that it actually is most poignant with my reality. It says that the hardest thing is to map it on a reality. Well, I have a reality that fits this in, whatever they were up to in this, they call it a capitalistic society, but I don't really know if that's the correct word for it. I don't have much experience with the humans and conversating with them on these topics, and they're not very forthcoming. So, and I don't, well, whatever. So, my quantum entanglement has been very minimal. Um, and I don't know if that's to preserve the superposition in the quantum state. Again, I'm not quite clear on this. But there's this, well, I'll just go with this Hilbert space at the moment just to position myself. And somebody else knows about it. And he was one of the ones, I guess, that had one of these lifelong physics careers that I don't even know how it's constructed. Through Lewis, I'm trying to watch a couple of videos to figure out who's out there, in these other worlds and what they've been speaking on and conversating on while building this gigantic billionaire super PAC class that somehow was taken from my ability to even get to a healthy level within this paradox or this indoctrine or this, I don't know the correct verse on this. So here's what it looks like.
Yeah, so this question of whether or not Hilbert space is finite or infinite dimensional. Not Hilbert space is finite or infinite dimensional is actually secretly connected to gravity and cosmology. This is the part that we're still struggling to understand right now. But we discovered back in 1998 that our universe is accelerating. And what that means, if it continues, which we think it probably will, but we're not sure, but if it does, that means there's a horizon around us. There's because the universe is not only expanding, but expanding faster and faster, things can get so far away from us that from our perspective, it looks like they're moving away faster than the speed of light. You'll never see them again. So there's literally a horizon around us, and that horizon approaches some fixed distance away from us. And you can then argue that
In if and only if that's the case, which is what it felt like as a child and how I explain it in growing up in this environment and trying, even at the point of I was assigned a family member. I was waiting. That person said that when it was time, he would find me for marriage. And then he never arrived. So that was the expectation. That was the introduction. And then that was the letdown. That was the where did it go? I asked for information, if I could have information. I mean, like, I don't even have a copy of the photo that he took. Can I have a way to contact you and stay in contact with you if we are to be married? But he said that he couldn't. So, but then would arrive randomly, almost, I don't know, is that like a check in on me to make sure that I was doing all right? Because I wasn't. At times I was, but it was very isolating. The girls were not including me in any of the things that they were doing socially. They were not socially interacting with me. In fact, the Dances with Wolves movie came out, and it was the first time that we had gotten together as a group outside of school ever. And he was there for that one time. And then he went away and they went away. Like they just withdrew any interest whatsoever. No conversations, no anything. And then I was assigned someone, Jacqueline, who didn't look like a fourth grader, but again, who was I to point that out? I mean, obviously she knew who she was, and she was in my classroom with me, but I don't know what was going on in the world outside of that. And she befriended me, and then she became my best friend, and my only friend, and my confidant throughout the remainder of elementary into junior high.
within that horizon, there's only a finite number of things that can possibly happen, the finite dimensional Hilbert space. In fact, we even.
No, and my point is with that, is with this circle moving almost like at the speed of light away from me into my season of having children and becoming important in bringing in this child of the future, who is very relevant, very tangible, very real in importance. Um, when they withheld that person, that family member who I was to marry and who was going to find me when it became time, then how was I to care for myself? And how was I ever to care for this child? I mean, they took away the educational, like, importance, and then they removed the assigned male part that I needed and that I wanted and that I was happy with, and then nothing replaced it. I mean, there's some bad blood relations that whatever that came thereafter, but I mean, it nothing I pursued for certain. But where are the stepping stones, or where is the direct hand off to the appropriate person? That's where I'm still really struggling with. I'm only 44 and I still have importance, as does the child, and as does it the cosmology and the aerospace. But where did my person go? Where was my assigned family rep? How do I contact that person? Why is there no physical contact? It's like a bunch of wave functions to speak astrophysics or Hilbert theory of they come, they wave, and then they disappear into their own worlds. Well, my world still exists in a parallel, and I still have needs, both humanly and physically, and they're not being attended to.
But guess for what the dimensionality is? It's 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 122. That's a very large number.
Yes.
Just to compare, the age of the universe is something like 10 to the 14 seconds, 10 to the 17 or 18 seconds, maybe. The number of particles in the universe is 10 to the 88th, but the number of dimensions of Hilbert space is 10 to the 10 to the 122. So that's just crazy big. If that story is right, that in our observable horizon, there's only a finite dimensional Hilbert space, then this idea of branching of the wave function of the universe into multiple distinct separate branches has to reach a limit at some time. Once you branch that many times, you run out of room in Hilbert space. And roughly speaking, that corresponds to the universe just expanding and emptying out and cooling off and entering a phase where it's just empty space literally forever.
And again, in that empty space, there has to be some form of connection and stepping stones in order to get a child like myself, with what my humble beginnings were, into something that is survivable and sustainable. I mean, again, I'm RH negative. It's an incredibly rare and important component of the family tree. Um, and then the cosmology is on top of it in order to itemize and prioritize. There's, I'm going to go back um, from this part of what he speaks on to the beginning, where he speaks on quantum systems at 315 and goes to 340 into the question is how do you map that theory with reality being the most important um, piece. So here's 315.
The worlds are created anytime a quantum system that's in a superposition becomes entangled with the outside world.
What's the outside world?
It depends. Let's back up.
Yep.
Whatever it really says, what his theory is there's a wave function of the universe and it obeys the Schrodinger equation all the time. That's it. That's the full theory right there, okay? The question, all of the work, is how in the world do you map that theory onto reality, onto what we observe, right? So part of it is carving up the wave function into these separate worlds, saying, look, it describes a whole bunch of things that don't interact with each other. Let's call them separate worlds. Another part is distinguishing between systems and their environments. And the environment is basically all the degrees of freedom, all the things going on in the world that you don't keep track of. So again, in the bottle of water, I might keep track of the total amount of water and the volume. I don't.
So again, there was a quantum system created with entanglement between his world and my world. So there is this spark of important substance in instant, and then he just disappears and leaves me hanging, just leaves me in a life that I can't survive in. Where did he go and what was the backup plan? There has to have been something created, especially when the child actually came. I mean, again, the people that study and know about the busts and the cosmology and the special children of the world, and they know their order, their cycle, and how the planet is and where they're coming. There's some form of way that they track this. They knew about mine. And then for the layman, that, I mean, I wouldn't question the people that know that level of stuff, but for in this perverse world that I'm living through, I mean, for those in a mass mob mentality that don't believe for some reason, the child arrived. Now what? I'm still who I said I was and who they said I was. I still have importance, and I was still just left. And they had an expanding universe. Some call it capitalism. I don't. Some call it socialism. I've heard the word communism like put out there. I really don't know what these words mean. I don't know what they mean in orientation because I have no quantum entanglement with anybody. I wasn't part of a debate club. Um. So I don't know how to get from here until whatever comes next. But the baby's here. I'm here. And the family member that I was assigned just disappeared into the universe somewhere, and the galaxy was broken. That's the way that I describe it. Because the gala between he and I can't traverse, and I'm not in physical contact. I'm not even in electronic contact that I'm aware of with my person. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.